Nobody did more for themselves on Saturday than Mario Cristobal and James Franklin.
You are Locked On College Football, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this reaction episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth, which this time of year is all things college football. This episode is brought to you by our friends over at 5 Hour Energy, which fixes tired fast. With zero sugar, convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. Go to 5hourenergy.com, use promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order, cannot be used with other promotions. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. Every reaction to the biggest games, not every single game, of course, but the biggest ones, because that's what you care about the most. Let's start with Mario Cristobal and Miami. We'll get to Notre Dame later. We'll get to Vanderbilt later. How about the Commodores? But Mario Cristobal and the Miami Hurricanes, what a statement. That is a statement victory for Mario Cristobal and company. And I know what some of you are going to say. Florida's not any good. Graham Mertz is this. Graham Mertz is that. Graham Mertz got hurt. Yada, yada, yada. I picked Florida going into that game for a reason. That was a decently popular pick. They were only 2.5-point dogs, the Florida Gators were. You know why? Because on paper, that game should have been a lot more even. And Miami went in there and they ran them out their own building. 34-game home win streak, home opener win streak, don't care. Miami doesn't care. They don't have time for such matters. Cam Ward, 385 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception, which was the true Cam Ward gunslinger experience. This Miami team is ready to win the ACC. With Cam Ward playing like that, they're ready to win the ACC. They're my pick to win the ACC, by the way, and I feel pretty good about that prediction here in a week 1 overreaction. And you look at what their schedule has, and there are going to be some big games, but they can get into the playoff. They could even, hear me out. Miami could find their way into the playoff without winning the ACC. I'm not saying that it is going to happen. I'm just saying if you play like that more often than not, it's entirely possible because they've got Virginia Tech on their schedule. They've got at Louisville. They've got Florida State. You could go 11-1 and an 11-win ACC team getting into the college football playoff. 10-win, no, that depends. That depends on a lot of different factors. But 11 wins in a Power 4 conference, that's getting you into the playoff whether you have a conference championship or not. If Miami plays like that on a week-to-week basis, yeah, that's going to be good enough. Now, I am not going to be the person that walks back my appreciation for what Florida did in the offseason and how good Florida actually is. I said going into the game, Miami fans should think of the Gators as a team like Virginia Tech. Turns out, I'll have more thoughts on that later. But I stand by that remark. That was a statement win for Mario Cristobal and company because that was not just going into the swamp and getting out with a win. That was going in, and from the moment the game really started, Miami was a better team. They look like the better team start to finish. And there have been plenty of questions about Mario Cristobal's game management and game planning. I think those have been fair questions to ask. But Shannon Dawson, the offensive coordinator, Cam Ward, a quarterback, they were fantastic. Xavier Restrepo had a big game. Miami was just better. They were just better. That was a really impressive win. That's what you look like as a football team when you're ready to win a conference championship and push for a college football playoff spot. That's what you look like. Now, you have to sustain that on a week-to-week basis. You can't birdie the third hole and think you're shooting 3 under. You got to make a couple other birdies. You got to avoid big numbers. You can't make too many bogeys. But you have taken the first step, and you have showcased that a Miami team that's got a lot of hype and has plenty of critics and doubters, and are they just, a portal team? Are they all about NIL and all this sort of stuff? That was a real football team. They play like a real football team. They look like one. They were that on paper. They proved me and a lot of other people wrong going into the swamp winning Florida. That's a big-time win for Mario Cristobal and the Hurricanes. So that was takeaway number 1. Then we go to the other side. I wonder if I'll be hearing from the West Virginia fans who told me very clearly that I was so wrong for writing them off, that I was so wrong, that West Virginia was going to win because they were at home, that the Mountaineers had actually improved a lot. And Penn State, what had Penn State really done? I heard that from West Virginia fans a lot this offseason. I also just want to slide in that UNLV went into Houston and absolutely blitzed the Cougars. Houston might go 0-12. Anyway, so I looked at that game, Penn State, West Virginia, and what happened last year and thought, no, I don't think West Virginia's made up over 20 points. Oh, what do you know? They haven't. And Drew Aller looked awesome. Drew Aller leaves an impression with a lot of people that is reflective of his worst games. You hear those euphemisms out there or statements or inspirational quotes about, I don't judge people on their worst moments. Drew Aller is constantly judged on his worst moments, not his best ones. He's got a new offensive coordinator. Boy, did that offense look different. The first touchdown of the game was an explosive passing play. Boy, it was music to the ears of everybody that calls himself a Nittany Lion fan, because that was sorely missing from the offense last year. And is West Virginia the best defense that Penn State's going to play this year? No. Is this Penn State team capable of winning 11 games? Appearing in the Big Ten championship game? Yep. They've got Ohio State at home. Ohio State got off to a sluggish start, not like an Oregon level of a sluggish start. Oregon played a horrible football game. If you'd like to hear all my thoughts on that, you can go check out Locked On Ducks, and I have a whole 30-minute podcast talking about it. But Oregon didn't look great. Ohio State didn't look great at first, and then Ohio State figured it out. Oregon didn't do the second part. They never figured it out. Penn State's got this thing figured out. I love the roster. I love the coaching staff. I like the quarterback. I watched that game, and yeah, Penn State was just better. And that's what you're going to see from Penn State far more often than not this year. You're going to see a different looking offense that is more creative. They use motion. They're more explosive. They get their quarterback to maximize his traits. Drew Aller made some special throws. He had an out route for a first down in the first half. That was an NFL throw. Big time. Guy was barely open. He wasn't open, really. The DB is draped all over him, and Aller puts it in the perfect spot. That's what he is capable of. And he showcased that in this game. He looks like the best version of himself. He looks like somebody that can lead Penn State to a Big Ten championship game appearance. He looks like somebody that is going to lead Penn State to the playoff. They're one of my preseason picks to make the college football playoff, and they probably only need to win 10 games to do that. Boy, they look really capable. They looked incredibly capable. It's a long season. You're going to forget about a lot of these games by the time the year comes to a close, but you're not going to forget about that right now, and you shouldn't, because that Penn State performance was impressive. I don't think West Virginia's a bad team. I just didn't think there was a chance they would beat Penn State in that game, and what do you know? They lost by over 20 points again. I will accept your apologies, West Virginia fans, but if you don't send them, that's okay. I understand how this arrangement works. Sometimes YouTube comments are like red pen. You know you're doing something right if you don't see a lot of them, at least in a particular direction. I don't hate you, West Virginia. I just didn't think you were good enough to play with Penn State. Lo and behold, West Virginia was not. I don't know if anybody's good enough to play with Georgia. We'll talk about that coming up next. And Notre Dame. Did you see Notre Dame lock up a playoff spot? I did. That's coming up next. Coming up right now, Factor meals. Fuel up with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved, ready to eat in just 2 minutes, so no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. 35 different meals, more than 60 add-ons to choose from. You'll always have a bunch of new flavors to explore. Make your day delicious. From breakfast to dessert, stay fueled with easy, nutritious options. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 and use LockedOnCollege50. That's the code to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. So you get to save 2 different ways if you use the code LockedOnCollege50. when you go to factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50 to get 15% off, or half off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. Go check out Factor's fresh, never frozen meal prep meals today. And once you're done with that, go check out eBay Motors, just because passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. They have superchargers, they have roof racks, they have exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. They're just built like that. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Did you see Notre Dame lock up a playoff spot on Saturday night in College Station? I did. I watched that happen. So, gutsy, gritty, slugfest, ugly, not pretty. Notre Dame wins game 23-13 over the 20th ranked Aggies, who were favored going into the game, and that did not cause me to waver off my Notre Dame prediction. Despite the offensive line question marks, they were able to overcome because that Notre Dame defense looked quite good. Connor Wegman, who I think is pretty solid, he was not solid in this game. Notre Dame's defense was really good, picked him off a couple times. Here's why Notre Dame locked up a playoff spot. Their schedule goes like this: Northern Illinois, Purdue, Miami of Ohio, not the Hurricanes, Louisville, it's at home, Stanford, at Georgia Tech, at a neutral site, but it's in Atlanta. So we'll call that at Georgia Tech. That game looks a little tougher than it did once upon a time. Navy, Florida State, that's at home. That game looks a little easier than it did once upon a time. Virginia, Army, at USC. If 12-0 is in the cards for Notre Dame, if they can win at College Station, I don't think Texas A&M is bad. I don't think they played great, but I think their offensive struggles were less due to Colin Klein and Connor Wegman, the offensive coordinator and quarterback combination there for the Aggies, struggling to find their footing, as it was Notre Dame's defense playing some good ball. Notre Dame can play. This is among the most favorable schedules in all of FBS. You talk about Notre Dame, you talk about Missouri. I mean, give me the easiest schedules. Florida's got the hardest one. Notre Dame might have the easiest one, the most navigable one. If you can go into College Station and win, I said this before the year, I maintain this even more so, having seen how this game plays out. I think Notre Dame's offense is going to find its rhythm more throughout the year. You're going to get more reps with that offensive line where you have some new faces. You have a new offensive coordinator and a new quarterback in Mike Denbrock and Riley Leonard. If your defense is ready, and boy, it looks like it is, and your offense can just continue to improve, this is a really good Notre Dame team. There's a really good Notre Dame team that will win 10 games bare minimum, probably 11, which is where I had them going into the season. Florida State could still get them, but I mean, at home, I'm taking Notre Dame to win that football game. Watch out for Georgia Tech. I think they lose last week of the regular season against USC, but we will see how good the Trojans are. Later tonight, 4:30 Pacific time, 7:30 Eastern on ABC, they take on LSU. I've got USC winning that football game, and it's going to be really entertaining, but we'll also get a good idea of what are the defensive improvements like for both staffs. Those two teams, remember, mirror each other identically in every way, in a fashion that I've never seen before. Head coach came from a high-profile school. He's in his third year, replacing Heisman quarterback. Defensive staff overhaul. Never seen anything like it before, but we'll have an idea about them. We've got a pretty good idea on Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame is a real good football team, and this is an impressive win. I think Texas A&M is an 8-ish win team, 7-8 win team, and for Notre Dame to go on the road, hostile environment, new quarterback, left tackle's a freshman, and they made it work. It wasn't always pretty, but they got it done. They found a way to win. Heck of a game by the Fighting Irish there. So, big win for Marcus Freeman. Statement victory for the Irish. I think they have all but locked up a playoff spot, barring a cataclysmic number of injuries throughout the course of the year, like what we saw with Utah last year, where they just didn't have scholarship healthy guys available. They had players switching positions because they didn't have enough depth. Barring something like that, Notre Dame's going into the playoff. You can write it down. They're going to host a playoff game. They're winning at least 10 games, which could be enough, but I think they're going to get to at least 11, and that will be enough and should be enough. So, props to the Irish. Did you watch Georgia pull a Michigan? Joel Klatt last year described Michigan correctly as the boa constrictor of college football, a metaphor that I didn't always love hearing, though I like Joel Klatt and the work that he does. I didn't always love hearing that because I have a giant, I mean hugely abnormal fear of, I'm not even going to say it, the slithery things. And so I didn't like visualizing that. It was, however, accurate. That's what Georgia did. What Michigan did to teams last year is what Georgia did to Clemson in this game. This was close at the half. Clemson's hanging around. They can't score, but their defense is hanging in there. And then eventually, they just keep coming. They just wear you down. And you can't hold on. Georgia has been my preseason number one team and national championship pick for a very long time. I saw absolutely nothing in this game that makes me feel any differently about that particular sentiment for two reasons. Number one, their defense is stupidly well coached. I am a football X's and O's junkie. That may or may not be obvious given the nature of this show and the extent to which I talk about college football on a daily basis. I cannot get enough of watching Georgia play defense. They don't blow assignments. They are incredibly well coached. They don't make mistakes. They tackle well in space. The scheme always feels like it is correct. They have multiple hats to the ball. Every single detail that any defensive coordinator worth his salt will say, we always want to be doing those things. It feels like Georgia does them on every single play. And it is poetry in motion. And I'm an offensive guy. If I were to be a football head coach, or if I were to be, this is a more accurate way to put it, if you were going to make me a coordinator in EA College Football 25, I'd be the offensive coordinator before I was the defensive coordinator. But man, I appreciate watching Georgia play defense. And this Clemson team, this season's not over for Clemson. I was actually pretty impressed with Clemson. Their defensive line, that's going to be a problem in the ACC. I know Georgia eventually got 34 points. You know why? Offense couldn't sustain any drives. This plays out in college football every single week. Your defense is doing everything they can, giving you a chance, and all of a sudden, 90 seconds after they got off the field forcing a punt, they have to go back out there because you couldn't move the ball down the field and score. Eventually, they're going to wear out, and Georgia wore them out. And Carson Beck made enough plays, and the offense wasn't fully clicking. This is the second thing with Georgia. Offenses routinely, not always, you look at, Texas, for instance, against Colorado State, they blasted them into oblivion. The offense was just fine. Offenses take longer to get going than defenses. You hear this from coaches routinely at every single level. Offenses in fall camp are generally behind the defenses. And some offenses, they're firing on all cylinders. That's great. I have faith that when you're working in those new weapons, Georgia is going to get them incorporated and they're going to be able to operate at a high level. So you haven't unlocked the full potential of this Georgia offense in the first week. The defense is every bit as good as I thought it would be. And they beat the 14th ranked team in the country 34-3. And I think Clemson could be meeting Miami in the ACC championship game. I was more impressed with Clemson than I was with Florida State. It's week one. Observations, not conclusions. That Clemson defensive line was good. First half, Georgia offensive line, they got some veterans up there. They had problems. They had major problems because Clemson was being disruptive. So, Notre Dame's going to make the playoff. Georgia, I still have picked to win the national championship. And Clemson, season's not over. Season's not over. ACC championship within sight. That's the only way Clemson gets to the playoff, though. I don't think they go unbeaten the rest of the way. and wind up at 11-1, then you don't need a conference championship. If Clemson's making the 12 team, they're going to have to win the ACC. Are they capable? Yes. Who's the biggest threat right now? Boy, it looks like Miami. It looks like Miami. Those next tier teams in week 1, they didn't show it. Virginia Tech lost. NC State, not that impressive. Florida State, we'll see if they figure it out. The ACC title race is on. And after week 1, it's Miami against Clemson, and both those teams looked really good. Virginia Tech did not. Oh, no, Virginia Tech. I'm going to speak on behalf of Virginia Tech to me because, well, that's just what needs to happen. Shout out to Vanderbilt, by the way. That's coming up next. Coming up first, 5-hour energy. Are you tired after lunch? I'm tired right now as I record this show. In fact, research shows that more than 70% of us hit the wall after lunch. Let a 5-hour energy shot help you leap over that wall instead of crashing into it. That's a much better option. With zero sugar and a convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5-hour energy website has flavors galore like watermelon, tropical burst, grape, berry, and more. There's a flavor for everyone, so go try them all on the site. You even have the option to build your own 12-pack or 24-pack. You choose the flavors, and it's delivered right to your door. How about that? Pretty great for you. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5-hour energy, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to get 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th, so go act now as soon as possible. Maybe as you're listening to or watching this show, On One Order is the only place that you can use the code. Cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. A disastrous start to the season for Virginia Tech. Not about how you start, it's about how you finish. My preseason record prediction for the Hokies was 10-2. Like their returning production, like the quarterback, like their coach, like their schedule. You went and lost to Vanderbilt. They were a 13.5-point favorite. Lose the game outright. That is the second upper-tier ACC team to lose as a double-digit favorite. Of course, one of the other ones, or the other one, Florida State, lost to another ACC team in Georgia Tech. We'll see if the Yellow Jackets can rise to the top of the conference and surpass everybody's expectations. But this is a disastrous start for Brent Pry and the Hokies because they have legitimate dark horse ACC title aspirations. Now, those goals are still within reach. That's the optimistic viewpoint I want to give Virginia Tech fans here. There's no reason you can't play to the potential you showed in the second half of this game against Vanderbilt, make a run in the ACC, only have 1 or 2 conference losses, and play for a conference championship game. You're going to have to beat some of the heavy hitters along the way, like Clemson. I mean, Virginia Tech will have to beat Clemson or Miami to make the conference championship game. I think that much is pretty clear, at least after week 1. But they were sleepwalking. They went to Nashville losing 17-0 to Vanderbilt. Look, you get behind 10-0. Okay, Vanderbilt came out, did some really, really nice things, and I'll get to the Commodores in just a moment. But 17-0? Woof. That's not great. And then they come all the way back, and then the defense couldn't stop Diego Pavia. Diego Pavia is the architect of 2 of the more shocking results in the last 2 seasons of college football. Maybe the most singularly shocking outcome in the 2023 season when New Mexico State walked into Jordan-Hare, got a fat paycheck for showing up, and walked away with a win to boot. That was this guy. You might not know the name Diego Pavia. Virginia Tech fans certainly do. And Kyron Drones, I thought he showed some progress as a passer. We know what he can do on the ground, but you can't have a team get behind 17-0. That's on the defense. That's on the offense. That's on the coaching staff. That's on everybody. That's on everybody, Virginia Tech. What a horrible start to the year. What a start for Vanderbilt. Oh my goodness. I don't know how many games Vanderbilt's going to win this year. I just know that for 7 days' time, at least, the Commodores and their faithful get to be 1-0 with a non-conference win. You know the phrase SEC bias? You just had the potential last place team in the SEC knock off a team that is a dark horse to make the title game And if they don't do that, probably finishes fourth. Virginia Tech was preseason, I think, number 4 or 5 team in the ACC. Yikes. That is a yikes. That is a statement win for Clark Lee, who has pressure to win this year to keep his job. If they get to 5 wins, boy, that'd be something. The preseason win total was 2.5. The over's looking pretty good. Looking pretty good. Diego Pavia was fantastic in this game. Made some really good plays. He's got some zip on his arm. He made throws while he was getting drilled. I was really impressed. I was impressed as much as I was discouraged. You know what Virginia Tech should do? Let me speak on behalf of Virginia Tech here. They should mimic, to me, for picking them to go 10-2 before the year, Michael Caine as Alfred in The Dark Knight Rises, standing in front of Bruce Wayne's, albeit fake, grave. Spoiler alert. Bruce Wayne is not dead. At least not Christian Bale's. You trusted me. You trusted me, and I failed you. You did fail me, Virginia Tech. I stuck my neck out there for you. I said you guys could do it. I said this was the pop year in Blacksburg, and well, there's 11 games left in the regular season. There's time to turn it around, but that was an epic fail. Epic fail, bad vibes for the Hokies. But what are the vibes for the Commodores? My goodness. I want to talk about Michigan, too. So, Michigan was not overly impressive. It was a 13-3 game going into the fourth quarter. Then eventually they pulled away. And it's a no sweat 30-10 victory for the reigning national champs. Davis Warren got the start. 15-25, 118 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. It's not inspiring. I've seen Davis Warren and Alex Orji throw the football. They're both capable of spinning the ball a little bit. Are they going to get better? They need to. They need to if they're going to contend for another Big Ten championship. Though at the moment, the Oregon game doesn't look as daunting as it did once upon a time. We'll see what happens come November. That's a long ways away. But Michigan was kind of, Michigan and Arizona, I had the same reaction. You know, this wasn't a disastrous performance. Never actually felt like you're going to lose the game. Arizona was worse than Michigan by a long, long shot. Arizona, the worst outcome for Michigan. New Mexico is a scrappy team in the Mountain West. They lost to an FCS team last week in Montana State after having a 17-point lead that they let slip away at home. They went into Arizona, number 21 team in the country, and put up a bunch of points. Final score, I think it just went live as just went final as I'm recording the show, or close to it. 61-39. New Mexico put up 39 points in Tucson. Now, what these teams are showing you in week 1 is what their lowest point can be. Or at least that's what we think. Or what a low point can be. Michigan not being able to put away a good Mountain West team at home, that's a low point. Oregon legitimately struggling with an FCS opponent, that's a low point. Arizona allowing 39 points. Tetsuo McMillan's ridiculous, by the way. But that's wide receiver 1 in the class of 2025 for the NFL as far as I'm concerned. That's a low point. Is it the lowest point? Will there be higher points? I get the feeling for all 3 of those teams, Michigan will play a better game at some point. Arizona will play a better game at some point. Oregon will play a better game at some point. But these were all benchmarks I looked at and went, boy, that's not great. That's not great. Not what you're expecting. Not what you're hoping for. Not what you're capable of. Is that the lowest point you hit all season? Do we look back and say, remember that time Michigan was letting Fresno State hang around at home in week 1? That was ridiculous. We'll find out next week. Texas is coming to town, and Texas did not mess around with Colorado State. 52-0, the final score in Austin. Are we going to look back at Arizona when they go to Kansas State and say, how did New Mexico put up 39 on these guys? They just went into Manhattan and beat Kansas State. Are we going to look back at Oregon later this year and say, how did Idaho push Oregon in the fourth quarter and make them leave their starters in the entire game? They just beat Ohio State. Is that going to happen? Or is what we saw in week 1 going to be what ultimately defines these teams' season? Is it going to be what they are? That's why we tune in next week, folks. That is why we tune in next week, too. That's why college football is so much fun. It's so great to have it back and have games to talk about. If you have a game you want my thoughts on, by all means, let me know in the comments. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.